Megan stood at the kitchen window holding a glass of wine. Dusk was fading outside, the warm orange light of the streetlights enveloping their suburban neighborhood. The dinner she'd prepared, steak, mashed potatoes and vegetables, was cooling on the stove. She'd made a special effort. She'd arranged the food on china plates, lit candles, pulled out their wedding glasses. It all seemed insignificant, but to her it was ritual. 15 years wasn't just a date, it symbolized their time together. She glimpsed at the clock, 8:15 p.m. His call had rung an hour ago. "I'm sorry, Megan, things are falling apart at work. I'm not going to make it on time. I'll try to be home as soon as I'm done," Andrew said. His voice was tired but confident. "You don't even remember, do you?" she asked then, trying to hide her excitement. "Remember? Remember what?" Andrew was silent, as if thinking about something. "I'm sorry, I'll call you back, a coworker's calling." And that was it. "That's it. You didn't call back." Megan sighed, set her glass on the table, and wiped her palms on the kitchen towel. She tried to fight the disappointment, but a feeling of desolation came over her like a fog. She slipped a light cardigan over her shoulders, grabbed her leash and called for their golden retriever, Bailey. "Come on, girl," she said quietly to her dog. "Let's go for a walk." The street was quiet. Megan followed her usual route, trying to concentrate on the rustling leaves and the light pat of Bailey's paws on the pavement. Her thoughts kept returning to Andrew, however. She thought of the times he'd surprised her before, the sudden bouquets of flowers, the spontaneous weekend trips. Where had it all gone? As she passed a local park, she noticed the silhouette of a man sitting on a bench with a camera in his hands. Her heart sank for a moment. A familiar face brought back memories. It was Lucas, the photographer who had taken family photos for them a few years ago. "Lucas?" she hesitantly called out. The man looked up, squinted, recognizing her, and smiled broadly. "Megan." Wow, it had been years. He stood up, stuffed the camera into his bag and stepped closer. Bailey wagged her tail happily as if she recognized him too. "I didn't think I'd see you here," he said, petting the dog. "We don't live far away," she replied, smiling. There was the same light in his eyes that she remembered from their first meeting. "What are you doing here?" "Trying to catch a good shot of the sunset." Lucas nodded toward the camera. "But I guess I missed the moment." Megan laughed. She hadn't expected to be able to smile today. "And how are you?" he asked, looking directly at her. "Oh, fine. Work, kids, the usual." Her voice sounded strained and she could feel it. "Business as usual?" Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Something tells me there's a whole story behind this." She shook her head, trying to dismiss his question, but she realized how much she missed simple human attention. "Today is our anniversary," she said suddenly. "Where's your lucky guy?" "At work," she answered, her eyes downcast. Lucas was silent for a moment, and then gestured for her to sit on the bench. "I have a thermos of coffee here. If you don't have plans, keep me company." She hesitated, but eventually sat down next to him. Their conversation began with memories of the shoot, and then gradually moved on to more personal topics. Lucas talked about his projects, how he was working on a series of photographs about ordinary people and their stories. "What about you? You've always been so bright, full of ideas. What do you do now?" "I run a small cafe." Her answer sounded dry, almost apologetic. "That's good, but..." He looked at her. "Are you sure you're happy?" Megan froze. The question was too close to what she'd been asking herself for years. The evening stretched on at a leisurely pace. When they said goodbye, Lucas said, "Megan, you deserve to be looked at the way you want to be looked at." Those words echoed in her mind as she drove home. When she returned, she saw that the candles on the table had long since burned out and the wine had gone cold. Andrew still hadn't shown up. She tiredly threw off her cardigan and settled into a chair. Lucas's words came to mind. For the first time in years, Megan felt something more than just sadness. It was a feeling that her life wasn't over, that she still had the right to be happy. Megan couldn't sleep for a long time that night. Lucas's words still echoed in her head, echoing anxiously in her heart. "You deserve to be looked at the way you want to be looked at." She tossed and turned in her bed, listening to Bailey's quietly drifting off to sleep on the mat by the door, while in the next room Andrew pounded relentlessly on the keys of his laptop. The next day, while Megan was at work, her phone vibrated on her desk. The number was unfamiliar, but her intuition told her who it was. "Hi, it's Lucas," came his confident voice when she answered. "I hope I'm not interrupting?" "Oh, no, it's fine," she answered hastily, wiping her hands from the flour. She was just helping the chef prepare the dough for the cafe's specialty pies. "I thought you might be interested. I have an exhibition at the gallery tonight." I'd like you to come. Megan was surprised. She couldn't remember anyone inviting her to such events as easily as Lucas had. Oh, she stammered, mulling over the excuses she could come up with. No pressure, he continued. Just think about it. It would make me feel good if you came. Before he passed out, he added, oh yes, I almost forgot. The exhibit starts at 7. Megan spent the rest of the day thinking. She had never done anything like this before, going somewhere without Andrew's approval, hiding her actions. Still, she found herself wondering. Her life had long been a gray area, and this little challenge beckoned to her. When the clock showed 6 p.m., she decided to take a chance. She threw on a navy blue dress she hadn't pulled out of her closet in a couple years and gave her lips a quick touch-up. Telling Andrew that her friend had invited her to dinner, she left the house. The gallery was housed in a small building with stained glass windows with warm light streaming in. Megan walked in and immediately felt a different world surround her. The pictures on the walls, the jazz music, the muffled laughter of the guests. She looked for Lucas and soon he appeared, carrying a glass of red wine. You've come, he said, and there was genuine joy in his voice. I decided to take a chance, she smiled. Lucas led her through the room, explaining the stories behind his pictures. Each one was of people captured in moments of vulnerability or genuine joy. An old man with a book in the park, a girl chasing a kite. It's all about how we see each other, he said, looking at one of the photos where a woman was gazing pensively out the window. About how moments can tell more than words. Megan felt a slight tingle somewhere inside. Lucas spoke in a way no one had spoken to her in a long time, with genuine interest as if she was important. By the middle of the evening, she caught herself laughing. Lucas was casual, charming, and most importantly, he looked at her as if he saw her as a whole, not just a mother, a wife, or a cafe worker, but a woman in demand. When the exhibition was over, he walked her to her car. Thank you for coming. It means a lot to me, he said, smiling. Megan nodded but couldn't think of what to say. Good night, he added, and strangely enough, he didn't try to hold her back. She left, feeling a strange warmth that filled her heart. When Megan got home, Andrew was sitting on the couch, tucked away on his laptop. He didn't even move when she walked in. She stepped closer. Andrew was already asleep, his glasses slipped down his nose and a table of numbers glowing on the screen. She carefully removed his glasses from him and placed them on the table. Her gaze fell on their wedding photo, framed on the shelf. There, in the distant past, they looked at each other with sincere love. And now, Megan heard Lucas's voice in her head again. You deserve to be looked at the way you want to be looked at. Megan sat in her car in front of the coffee shop, clutching her phone in her hands. The text from Lucas came at lunchtime. How about coffee tonight? There are a couple places you'll definitely like. She stared at the text, rereading it over and over until she wrote a short, "Why not?" and hit send. Now that she had arrived on the scene, she was overcome with doubt. She hadn't told Andrew about her trip, limiting herself to a terse, "I have a late shift, don't wait up." But there was a storm inside her. Fear, excitement, even a faint sense of guilt. Lucas came out of the coffee shop just at that moment, spotted her and waved. His smile was easy as always, but there was more to it than simple friendliness. You're always on time, he joked as she approached him. They entered a cozy place with dimmed lights and the aroma of freshly roasted coffee. Lucas chose a table by the window, where the soft light fell on the table, creating an almost intimate atmosphere. This is my favorite place, he said, sitting down across from her. It's always quiet. It's a good place to think. Megan smiled and nodded as the waitress took her order. Their conversation started out with something simple. Work, everyday concerns, the occasional joke. But soon he moved on to deeper topics. You've always struck me as someone who could handle anything, Lucas said, leaning on the table. But now I see that you carry something more inside you. She froze for a second, not expecting such bluntness. What do you mean? You look like there's something in your life that's pulling you down, he continued, looking straight into her eyes. Megan felt something inside her shudder. Those words touched a nerve as if he'd seen her soul. Just tired, I guess. She tried to dismiss it, but Lucas didn't look away. Tired of what? She averted her eyes for the first time all evening. Sometimes, it feels like I'm stuck in a life that was chosen for me, not by me. Lucas nodded, understanding her without words. You deserve more, Megan, he said quietly. Their conversation went on for hours. Lucas talked about his dreams, about how photography had become not just a job, but a way for him to preserve moments that others might miss. He talked about the importance of listening to his heart, and every word he said sounded like a personal challenge to her. As the evening drew to a close, they walked out of the coffee shop and stopped in front of her car. The light breeze played with her hair, and Lucas looked at her with a warmth that made her heart beat faster. "Thank you for tonight," she said, trying to keep her tone even. "Thanks for coming," he replied. He hesitated for a second but added, "Megan, I know you're at a crossroads right now. I'm not going to push you, but know that I'm always here for you." His words sounded soft but confident, as if leaving her free to choose. When Megan got home, the house was silent. Andrew was sitting on the couch with his laptop, his face serious. "Hi," she said, taking off her coat. "Hi," he replied briefly, not even lifting his head. Her phone vibrated in her bag and she nervously pulled it out. A message from Lucas. "You made this night special. Thank you." She quickly locked the screen and placed the phone on the kitchen table, hoping Andrew hadn't noticed anything. But he did notice. Later, when she left to shower, he reached for her phone, which she'd left on the table. The screen glowed, showing the name Lucas. Andrew didn't open the message, but the name and the very fact that he was messaging this person made him think. Andrew put the phone away, looked toward the bathroom where the water was running noisily, and for the first time in a long time wondered what was going on in their relationship. The next day, Megan parked her car in front of her friend Laura's house, feeling the tension building up inside her. Laura had been her best friend for almost 10 years now, and she was the one she trusted with her innermost thoughts. Today, however, she was going to share something she was hesitant to say out loud. Laura herself met her on the porch, dressed in a cozy sweater, a cup of coffee in her hands. "Hello, fugitive," Laura joked, stepping aside to let Megan enter. "I thought you'd forgotten all about coming here." "Don't start," Megan said with a smile, but there was tension in her voice that Laura picked up on immediately. They settled on the couch in the living room and Laura nodded, pulling back the blanket. "Tell me. You didn't come here to discuss pie recipes." Megan was silent until she took a sip of tea to collect her thoughts. "I have something I need to talk about. But I don't know how you'll react." Laura looked at her carefully. "You know I'll always tell the truth. So spit it out." Megan began to talk. She described her feelings, the loneliness, the distance from Andrew, his perpetual excuses and fatigue. She talked about how she'd met Lucas, how he'd made her feel noticed. She talked about the coffee shop, about the exhibition, about his words that still echoed in her head. Laura listened in silence, only nodding occasionally. "So what now?" she asked when Megan was done. "I don't know." Megan shook her head. "I haven't done anything, Laura, I swear. But I feel like I'm standing on the edge of something wrong." "Because it really is," Laura said quietly. Megan looked up at her. "Look, I'm not judging you," Laura continued. "I understand why this happened. You feel abandoned. Andrew's gone to work and you just want someone to remind you of who you really are." Megan clenched the cup in her hands, feeling her defenses crumble. "But Megan," Laura's voice became more serious, "think about what you could lose." Megan tried to object, but Laura held up her hand. "Wait a minute. You know my husband talks to Andrew sometimes. They're not friends, but he told me something recently." "What?" Megan asked, her voice trembling. "Andrew is worried. He said he feels like he's losing you, but he doesn't know what to do about it. He doesn't tell you because he seems to think you won't notice." Megan didn't expect this. "He mentions that things aren't going as smoothly at his job as he's showing. A big contract has fallen through, the bosses are pushing, and he's trying to keep you out of it. But it seems that in all of this he's really lost sight of you." Megan stares into her cup, feeling her thoughts muddle. "I know you're angry with him," Laura continued, "and you have your reasons. But think about it. Is Lucas the real solution to your problems? Or is he just a temporary escape from them?" Megan stood up, setting her cup on the table. "I don't know, Laura. I just don't know." When she got home, Andrew was sitting in the kitchen, pensively leafing through papers. He looked up when she walked in. "Did Laura feed you?" he asked, trying to smile. "Yes, thank you," Megan replied, but her voice sounded distant. She walked past him into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, feeling a heaviness growing in her chest. Laura's words echoed in her head, forcing her to look at the situation from a different angle. On the bedside table lay their wedding photo. She picked it up and stared at it for a long time, trying to remember the last time she had felt so close to this man. Megan walked into the house after a hard day's work, expecting the usual silence. Usually at this time Andrew was either engrossed in his work on his laptop or already asleep on the couch, remote control clutched in his hand. But today a different house greeted her. The lights were dimmed and a warm smell wafted from the kitchen, garlic, herbs, something roasting. She froze in the hallway, looking around in surprise. "You're home already?" Andrew's voice came from the kitchen. She froze in place, not knowing how to answer. Usually he didn't even notice her arrival. "Yes," she said, taking off her coat. "What's going on?" He came out to meet her, wiping his hands on a towel. He was wearing an old apron, the same one she'd bought him years ago when he decided to cook for his anniversary one day. "I thought," he paused as if trying to find the words. "I thought we should spend the evening together." He nodded toward the kitchen. Dinner was almost ready. Megan was stunned. She couldn't remember the last time he'd done something like this. She followed him, peering into the kitchen where pots and pans stood on the stove and candles and a bottle of wine sat on the table. "What is this special occasion?" she asked, trying to hide the nervousness in her voice. "You," he answered simply, not looking at her. "This is a special occasion." When they sat down at the table, the atmosphere was tense, but Andrew was clearly trying. He poured the wine into glasses, handed her a plate of pasta and meat, made, he claimed, from a special recipe. Megan tasted it cautiously and smiled. "It's delicious." "Thank you," he replied with a shy smile. They ate in silence for a couple minutes until he finally looked up. "Megan, I know I haven't been the best husband lately." She froze, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth. "I didn't want you to think I didn't notice you or that I didn't care," he continued. "But I guess that's the impression I gave you." Megan didn't know what to say. Andrew never talked about his feelings. "The thing is," he put down his knife and fork, "I've been going through a rough patch at work. We lost a major contract and it was my responsibility. I felt like I had let my team down, my superiors. You." His voice shook and he looked away for a second. "I thought if I just worked harder I could fix it. I tried to provide for us, but instead I only alienated myself from you and the kids." Megan felt her heart clench. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked quietly. "Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd think I was a loser. That I wasn't good enough for you." Those words caught her off guard. She'd never thought of him that way before. "I'm sorry, Megan. I really am. I want to make it right. I want us to be closer again like we used to be." She stared at him, seeing not the confident man he'd always seemed, but a man who'd opened up to her, showing his weaknesses. It touched her to the core. But at the same time, the image of Lucas popped into her mind. His gaze, his words, his soft voice. Remembering how she'd felt around him, Megan realized that Andrew had been right. They were indeed estranged. Her heart clenched with guilt, but she also felt that her feelings for Lucas had already crossed the line where they could be ignored. Andrew stood up and walked over to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I want you to know that I'm willing to fight for us." Megan nodded silently, feeling tears come to her eyes. Her head was filled with thoughts she couldn't express. They finished dinner in silence, but that silence was filled with the feeling that something had changed. When Andrew cleared away the plates and retired to the bedroom, Megan was alone at the table. Her gaze slid to the phone that lay on the table. A message was glowing on the screen. "Good night, Megan. You're in my thoughts tonight." From Lucas. Megan sat in her car in front of the coffee shop, nervously clutching the steering wheel. She checked her reflection in the mirror a few times. Neat hair, light makeup, but her eyes still gave away her anxiety. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a moment of truth. She'd called Lucas over to put an end to what had started between them. Megan didn't know how he would take her words, but she was sure she couldn't balance two lives anymore. The coffee shop was practically empty. Lucas sat at the far table by the window, his gaze wandering somewhere beyond the glass. When he spotted her, a warm smile lit up his face. "Hi," he said as she approached, gesturing for her to sit across from him. "Hi," she replied, trying not to give away the tremor in her voice. They ordered coffee and the first few minutes passed in silence. Lucas seemed to sense her tension. He folded his hands on the table, leaned closer and said quietly, "Megan, I feel like there's something you want to tell me." She looked at him, trying to find the words. "Lucas," she began cautiously, "everything that's been between us, I appreciate it. But I can't go on." His face didn't change, but something in his eyes trembled. "I thought everything in my life was falling apart," she continued. "But I have to rebuild it. For myself, for my family." Lucas was silent for a long moment, as if digesting her words. Then he nodded. "I'm glad you found your answer," he said, his voice calm but with a deep sadness in it. Megan wanted to apologize, to explain, but he held up his hand, stopping her. "I wanted to talk to you too," he said. "That probably makes your decision even easier." She frowned, not sure what he meant. "I got a job in another city," Lucas continued. "I'm moving next week." Her heart clenched, but she felt oddly relieved at the same time. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. "Because I didn't want to put pressure on you. I knew you were facing a choice." I didn't want my decision to affect yours. Lucas leaned a little closer, his gaze soft and warm. Megan, you deserve happiness, real happiness. If you think you can find it with Andrew, then go to him. I want you to be happy. These words, filled with sincerity, touched her deeply. She nodded, struggling to hold back tears. Thank you, Lucas. For everything. He smiled, but there was goodbye in that smile. Megan arrived home late that night. The house was quiet, but not oppressively so this time. She caught Andrew in the kitchen. He was making himself tea and thoughtfully leafing through something on his phone. Are you home yet? He asked, his voice sounding tired but not distant. Yes, she answered, taking off her coat. She froze for a moment, gathering her wits. Then she stepped closer and put her hand on his shoulder. We need to talk, she said quietly. He nodded and gestured for her to sit at the table. That night was a turning point for them. Megan talked about her feelings, how she felt abandoned, how their marriage was slowly becoming a formality. Andrew listened in silence, but his look said he understood. When she finished, he took her hand. I don't want to lose you, Megan. You're my family, my life. And I'm willing to fight for that if you'll let me. Her eyes filled with tears. I want to try too. The next night they had dinner. Together. Andrew cooked and Megan helped, laughing at his attempts to cut the vegetables straight. They reminisced about the past, shared their dreams. At that table, lit by the soft candlelight, they felt they could truly hear each other for the first time in years. The final scene, two hands reaching out to each other across the table, as if confirming that their story is not over. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.